Today's the 18th of November. Call to order the Open Space Committee meeting. Pretty full agenda today. I figured out if we, to be on time, we got 6 minutes per item. So I don't think we're going to hit that.
We're always on time.
Yeah, never.
Goal.
So just for the record, and just a couple new faces in the room, let's just quick go around introduction. Who you are, committee you're on, or affiliation, and maybe where you live. So Bill Hoffman, I'm co-chair with David on the Open Space Committee, and I live over in 21 Marsh Ave, over in Bulltown. Mike?
I'm Mike Carboni. I am the clerk for the Open Space Committee, and I live over on Scotland Road.
I'm Sadie. I am assistant planner for Newbury. I'm kind of the Open Space Committee designated staff person, and I live actually in Radley.
Sean McElroy, Open Space Committee member. That's it. I live on Main Street.
John Regan, Central Street, Recreation Committee, and Board of the Boston Committee.
Hi folks, Gerard Whitten, guest attending this evening. I live out on Long Island, and I also work at Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and happy to run with you folks tonight.
Oh, David Powell, 5 Kent Way, and co-chair together with Bill, and all the other things you can take for granted.
And Jim Dooling, 51 Orchard Street in Byfield. Open Space Committee, also on the Board of Boston Bike Committee with John and Sean.
All right, great, thanks. So, and the first agenda item we have citizens queries. Because Gerard wasn't put on the agenda, we thought maybe Gerard, you could be the citizen here from the town. So, as I understand it, you are you work for Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. Sean had you come because
Yeah.
okay. I guess you're knowledgeable of climate change. I don't know exactly what your role is.
I have some experience with that. I have some experience personally, and the organization that I oversee has a great deal of expertise in that space. And I have sat previously on the Open Space Committee for the town of Newbury, and then some years ago I was on the Beach Committee for the town. And so I have some experience that perhaps can contribute. One of my interests in being here this evening was to find out where you folks are in the process and understand if there's anything that we can do from an organizational standpoint to help you along. Sadie attends our planners meetings quite often, so she's familiar with our organization, how it functions, and so really want to kind of learn from you, as I mentioned, but also figure out how I might be able to contribute into the space, either from a resident perspective or from our organization's perspective.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say we have used MVPC already for a lot of, they've been a huge help with our mapping. We worked with Steve Lopez and Sophie Ulick. And then Hannah Mogensen, I know she's been out, but she's also been a huge help, and we definitely plan to catch up with her when she's back in the office. But I guess, yeah, at the moment we're kind of just in the, we're in the narrative drafting stage. And actually, we've also been, as a group, organizing a sort of like boards and committees, little like feedback outreach. And we received a response so far from the chair of the ConsCom, which is great. So we're kind of just in that stage of like feedback, drafting, and yeah, I think at this meeting we'll talk more about like our like near-term goals for next steps in that process.
And you folks are drafting the narrative all yourselves. That's pretty impressive. In addition to working, we have this other job for you guys. So that's a place where maybe we can help you guys. Obviously a lot of expertise here. The regulations from Melissa Cryan's office for how the open space plans are compiled has obviously recently been updated. And so things that you probably are trying to tackle is like, what's our inventory of the ADA compliance at your different properties? That's one thing that we could check in on and maybe help you a little bit with.
They got rid of that.
They did entirely?
Yeah, so it's no longer in the workbook.
I'm
That's
pretty sure,
right.
yeah, there was a section on ADA compliance that they got rid of. But they were saying like, if, you know, if we want to include that as part of our plan, we can, but it's just not required.
It's not a requirement.
Yeah.
Let's go, yeah, because she was wrestling with that the last time we had chatted, and I thought she was gonna get a little more, we should have some feedback. So the plan also has to be ultimately just reviewed by Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. And so as you're compiling the different components, if you're early in the phase, we could maybe suggest ideas or concepts or things that you want to make sure you cover. If you've already drafted some narrative and you feel like it's in a place where a review, our staff could review against the different criteria from the workbook. Or if it's really just a matter of once the product's completed and you want us to just sign off on it and write you a letter of endorsement, that's really the sort of minimum role that we can play. But want to make it as robust for you folks as possible and lend anything we can to that. You touched on something that I think is really perceptive, which is your outreach to other boards and commissions, because obviously something like this isn't effective if not everyone has some knowledge of it and some buy-in. And so when you guys are making decisions about maybe even action plan parcels, places where you think the town really should be focusing on future acquisition, having other boards be aware of that and aware of your priorities helps them as plans or projects come before them, they at least are aware of the town's overall perspective on some of this. Have you already conducted your survey to residents? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and I think we'll probably do another, like, public meeting soon when we are looking for feedback about, like, the action plan that we've created and if anything's missing or if...
Great.
Yeah, we would normally do a second public meeting to review, pardon me, to review when we've gotten to the point of drafting our goals and the action items which come out of that. And then anything that comes out of that feeds back to modify maybe a direction that we need to re-emphasize or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, love, you guys know this question, answer this question, but like, how much support can we, I mean, obviously we don't have a budget for this, so how much support do we get from Merrimack Valley, and when can we draw on that?
So any of our communities get what's called technical assistance time, which is up to 35 hours. So the community and say that you guys might have used a little bit for some GIS along the way. We also have some other funds that are connected to that are through our state's district local technical assistance. It's called, just fancy terms to say it's some time allocated to help communities for things like this. So we can't write the plan for you, obviously, but we can, through a request that Sadie would help facilitate, that comes into our office, say, hey, we want to set aside this number of hours, it doesn't cost you anything. We are a public nonprofit and it's a regional organization, so our intent is just help the communities to advance different plans and objectives like this and to add some regional context to them so that some of your neighbors are having some of the same maybe aspirations for the types of properties, or if it's continuity of parcels that you're maybe looking to acquire, there's some maybe regional connection there. That's the other element that we can add to that. So the process is pretty simple when we get to a place where you're like, hey, maybe this would be a place where we want to be helpful, or we would ask for help. You could, I guess, work through Sadie and then just have a request submitted. Probably if there's a bigger piece to it, you're like, hey, we'd like you to do this now, and these other pieces, maybe we could just put together a very bulleted, succinct scope of work that still would be for that time, but just so that we're all clear on what your expectation is of us, and there's no misunderstanding, oh, I thought you guys were going to do all this other stuff, that kind of thing.
So we could hypothetically like send you guys like a really rough draft and you could like tell us if we're on the right track or like what we're missing and
Absolutely,
stuff.
yeah. I would suggest if you're at that phase, rough draft, and you said you've already been working with Steve on the maps, right?
Yes,
They've had some
yeah.
drafts with you guys.
Yeah.
So kind of keep that on its own track. Obviously, you've got that already covered, but maybe it's like we look at an initial draft now, provide some guidance and be like, okay, let's maybe embellish on some of these sections, and you guys obviously parse that out among yourselves, and then maybe we would do a review as you kind of are wrapping it up or something like that, and then that's a place where we're really trying to dig in a little deeper to the narrative and provide any final feedback. But we should be able to target at least some of the things you should address if we're not seeing them at the outset, so that your draft comes pretty close to hitting that mark.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great, yeah.
One of the challenges we've had, I think, a little bit is trying to get a grasp of whether the workbook from the state is something that we need to be, how should I say, is that something that is flexible, what would you say, in terms of what the state expects to see, or with these things?
We've seen them get pushed back if they don't adhere to the requirements. I think, you obviously have to address the specific sections that they're referencing, but within that, it is supposed to be the community's plan. So, do you have an example of where you're thinking maybe you want to
Well,
add
the one I'm
some?
working on is climate change.
Yeah.
And that's a new section too, so.
Yep. It's
there are very few-
new to the open space process as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
In fact, I think we only found one town that submitted one that was accepted.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar town in some ways, but it's not coastal,
Yeah.
which seems to be what, our biggest issue in terms of climate change. But anyways, I think maybe the directions in the workbook seem like they're fairly preliminary as well. So it's kind of a little bit difficult to get a picture of what, so when I'm doing this, I have like sort of two things in my mind. One is I want to make sure I hit all the points that are in the workbook so that it doesn't just get kicked back. But I also want to hit the things that are important to the town, whether they're in the workbook or not. And keep the thing, somewhat condensed.
Readable. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's those are a lot of things that I think in just about every section is this way, I would say, judging from what I've seen. Anyways, I guess to get to something that might be helpful from you guys would be if you are seeing other towns, say, if you had other examples or anything concrete that you could sort of say, okay, how does our stuff compare to that? Is it in the same ballpark or way out in the field? Or certainly you guys, no problem. I think it'd be great to have you guys review what we've got eventually here, once we feel comfortable that we're past the draft stage. But,
I'll be honest with you, with regard to the climate impact section, this is very new space, and the communities that we've worked with thus far in open space haven't had to trip into this yet, so our work in that area has been more via the state's municipal vulnerability preparedness program and our hazard mitigation planning. That's really where we have kind of tunneled into this. However, it's interesting from an open space perspective because maybe those are some of the issues you're tackling, like does the town have an appetite for buying parcels for flood storage that are open space, because that's obviously what the open space process could facilitate. Or have you looked at maybe what roadways are inaccessible because of this, where maybe a town parcel might be potentially beneficial for an alternate route, or those would be the kinds of things that I would imagine would be issues that as a resident I would want to think about. I've noticed past couple of weeks, the town just installed some signs on the way out to my house. It says, when flooded, turn around, don't drown. Have you seen it?
Yes.
And I was like, wow, I wonder where that came about. Who decided that was the messaging? That was curious to me. And the one that's leaving the island is kind of too late. If you made it that far,
Done.
you probably already landed in the marsh, especially if it was night, But but that kind of thing, those are the issues that we as residents are going to face. So how do we get around an area, or how do we make sure that there's access from an emergency response perspective, maybe to certain areas, and could open space or town-owned, not necessarily passive recreational open space parcels, but more like parcels that the town owns that could facilitate access to locations, how might those be called into action if necessary, or something like that? Those would be, I think, some of the issues you want to
I think the town is working on both of those things simultaneously.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. And I think part of what we're trying to maybe avoid is a lot of overlap, but we want to cover it all, but there's no point in saying the same thing 3 times
Sure.
either. So,
Sure.
but that kind of input where, I mean, I think part of I can only speak for myself really. One of the things I'm missing out on is, you know, how does, where does open space, where do open space issues in terms of climate, where are those unique and not necessarily part of a hazard plan, or not necessarily part of looking at resilient lands and stuff like that? What part can we say, you know, okay, so this is the part that isn't going to be covered in those two documents, and we can embellish on it a little bit?
Well, it could be a little bit of both. I think to your point, you don't want to just have redundant text in both, but the purpose of the hazard mitigation plan is to identify all hazards, not just ones that might be flooding or assisted from having open space, where, you know, on the open space side, you're talking about places that the town might want to purchase or activate different parcels for different reasons. So they can kind of come at it from the same perspective. You might be explaining the value of the parcel from flood storage perspective. That's not going to necessarily get as articulated in HMP. It might be just say, hey, this is an issue, the town should pursue land for flood storage. And then you're explaining the why and the where. You see how those kind of can complement each other, because that's going to ultimately need to be in your action plan. You'd say, hey, listen, these are the areas that the town, if an opportunity arises, would like to purchase, that type of thing, or acquire.
Okay.
I in how we've divided things up, section 3, the community setting,
Yeah.
is in my camp.
Yeah.
And in the workbook this year, the new workbook, the updated one, they specifically say 2 to 3 pages. If you go to older plans, including ours from
Yeah.
2010,
Yeah.
there are 20
Yeah.
to 25
Very
pages,
extensive.
tons of
Right.
data, a lot of repetition from
Yeah.
master plans and things like that. So I think if we hand off a copy, sort of vetting like, how much detail, how much data really needs to be in that
Yeah.
section,
Yeah.
you know, in the sense that the community setting and the regional context and all that kind of is,
Yeah.
it's just, it can be descriptive, you can get way in the weeds,
Yeah.
which I don't think we want to do, given it's only 2 to 3, and they want the maps on top of that, so.
I think, I'm trying to think of the 2 communities that we just reviewed this year. I
Yeah.
think Salisbury was one of them, but
Yeah.
let me check my notes when we get back to the office, because I know
Yeah.
we just reviewed 2. So to your point, we'll be able to maybe draw some examples there. Our
Right.
environmental staff is pretty adept at
Yeah.
this. I'm just the figurehead, honestly.
Sure.
I didn't say that, Jess, but no, you know, and it's a struggle for me, because I think, how do you describe Newbury in 2 to 3 pages?
I know.
Like, there's so many different facets to how and what you want to explain.
Sure.
Are we missing some pieces if we're trying to truncate that space?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
maybe that's some of the work that you guys could try and always say, look, of all these sections, what do we think are the most important to bring forward? There's obviously some historic elements that we want to talk about. Probably the vast, large percentage of open space that this town has compared to others, partially as a function of having federal land, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe those would be the things that you guys could help elevate as far as which you think are most important, and then we can kind of match that against some of these other communities
Yeah.
to see, you know, like how does that stack up? Maybe that's already kind of what we're thinking about.
Yeah, we actually have a very particular situation in Newbury, from my perspective, and that is, okay, more than 50% of the town is essentially not up for any kind of development or building, okay? And when you look at that more than 50%, all right, nearly 45+% of that is owned by 3 major players, okay, the state, the federal government, and the trustees. That's not to say that Greenbelt doesn't have some too. And that means that our the town's relationship to open space has in many ways to be through and together with those organizations. And in fact, the town possesses very little
Directly, so.
directly, yeah. And the one open space, the largest single open space in the town is what? The beach. Right, which is of course a highly contentious area which doesn't stay the same, right? In the sense that since I've lived in the town 30+ years, that beach literally has changed its character as you well know, totally. And so I think when I look at what we're dealing with, we're essentially dealing with a situation that I can't find replicated. I don't expect to find it replicated, but I can't find it even very comparable in any of the other towns in the state. And I think we need to recognize that that means that the kind of goals that we have as a community have to factor in with the other players here, because it doesn't make any sense. One of the things I found interesting is that one of the requirements is to show the relationship of the community to the surrounding area, okay? And the standard map does the locus bit, and that shows the little town that sits there in the middle of, okay? And there's absolutely no encouragement in the workbook to do what I think we have to do, and that is to say essentially nearly all of the properties, in fact I think it's true to say all but the trustees and maybe the private ones, they all overlap in a very significant way into all the surrounding communities. So that is our real relationship in the sense of talking about where we are. And there's, you know, to me, that's the kind of function that your guys in mapping can do, because pulling that out and suppressing all the other kind of information for those other towns is important, I think, to us to talk about. One of the things that came up was the fact that, for example, we have part of the common pasture, but our part of the common pasture is very minimal compared with the part that exists in Newburyport. But that's a classic example of where the two communities came together to achieve the conservation, permanent conservation of that area, together also with help from, for example, from Greenbelt and the state. So I think that needs to be an important part of our message, is that we're not the only players. And also, sadly, we have no economic clout, because so far the town has chosen not to have any.
I think you bring up a good point. One, Sadie's, maybe we want to just kind of prompt in the mapping with Steve to be thinking about some of those different layers of either, you know, private nonprofits or other state properties, so you can see that connectivity to other communities. Yeah. But also maybe as you're thinking about the strategy, those different organizations can help cost share on acquisitions as well, and so that in a community that we all know is pretty fiscally conservative, that might be a good strategy to pursue, is what kinds of more, you know, partner-based collaborations with those different groups could you facilitate to help them get excited about projects that come up in Newbury.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, excellent. Well, this is extremely helpful, informative. We've had one of our from Mac Valley come and speak with us early in the beginning, and so it's nice to have your perspective. And it's nice that you live in the town, so you can directly relate. Does anybody else have any other questions for Gerard before we move on to our next item? And you're welcome to stay as long as you want, or leave it.
Yeah, I'll hang up. So my thought would be, just as you crystallize your thoughts around this, we're here however it can be useful to you, but we also don't want to be intrusive. So view us as kind of walking along with you and not looking to supersede you guys in the process. So if you kind of want us at different little dribs and drabs, let's just try and shape that so that then I can help our environmental staff kind of weave that into their plan so they know when we can be helpful for you guys.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate that. And
Yeah.
thanks, Sean, for
Yeah,
facilitating.
Sean, thanks for making the introduction.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for you had a great talk there.
Excellent. Okay, so the next agenda item is work with the Recreation Committee. So back in 8th, I believe, of October. Sean and Christina went and spoke with your committee at your meeting. Briefly, I think went over some of the results of the survey. We provided those to you. A part of this plan that we're writing is obviously recreation. And so included in that, I think it's like 6B. It's creating goals for the community, recreation goals. So you provided us with, you reviewed some of the results and you provided us with some goals. And these I think are really great that we can build off of. I guess are these goals from your plan or are these ones that you crafted up in response to the survey?
There's been a flurry of activity with all of the town report stuff, so it's hard to actually point to any one thing that got us going. But Sadie gave me a section of the workbook, and it's like, yeah, this makes sense. We had been for the town report, coming up with a list of goals, etc. So it wasn't extra work; it was just work to delegate. I didn't know. You guys have expectations on page counts and all that stuff, but I mean, that in a nutshell, I think was what we've been through. That's our short term anyway. We finished the Central Street Fields projects, keep an open ear to the ground for any other land available. We've got the Kent Way land. That's kind of, you hear the name every once in a while bandied about. In discussions with Tracy, the ball field over behind the library was always kind of a no man's land, and it seems to us that she's kind of put that in our plate, which is great, so we can do a plan for that, some kind of capital improvement over there. I did not put anything about trails because I think you guys are all over the trails. I could put it in there, but it seemed like you guys really seemed like that was coming out of your plan, was the trail maps, etc.
I think it's awesome that we both agree on those because I think that our committee wants to see that.
Oh, sure. Well,
we do too. So it's good. I think that working together on this, I'm happy to see that we have a lot of the mutual interests, I think, and vision for the town.
Yeah.
I think it's great working. It's been good working with you guys, and hope as this evolves, we can have your input.
You guys have left us alone. I think that's been great. We got our own issues,
challenges.
I just had a thought tonight too, which was Sadie had asked for like Board of the Boston open space piece, and I was like, oh, how does that work? And then I'm like, geez, that trail really will open up open space. I mean, that's going to get access into that. So that's where my piece is going to evolve from. It could probably go in there as well, because I think recreation and the rail trail we're kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
Just as open space, we're all kind of holding it. There's only a dozen of us working on everything.
Yeah.
But that was like a eye-opening. Like, geez, if we get access to Martin Burns with the rail trail, then there's a whole bunch of land there that people don't have a lot of access to.
True. Yeah.
Or even if the trail were to go through the Great Meadow, then, all right, we've got a challenge getting the rail trail from Newbury to the train station. And you're going to hear from me.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad that you brought this up because I saw the original crossing over 95 there and sort of wondered why Scotland Road and MassDOT was kind of pushing that as sort of the most sort of immediately available route. And obviously, you're probably thinking like, it's like there's some other opportunities.
I don't want to ride my bike on Scotland Road, but
precisely.
where you guys come in is though, like Newburyport's talking about Hale Street, and if they're going to build something on Hale Street, crossing over 95, then it would make a lot of sense for us to head in that direction. Like, let's keep going, connect to Hale Street, and then we're on Low Street, and we can get to the train station. So all that engineering stuff is just, that's called the northern segment, which would be from Byfield right over here by the post office. Could go north to 95, crawl along 95 somehow, and then, you know, you get to Scotland Road, you get to Hale Street, you get to a cow tunnel, you know, all that stuff. There's ways to get over it. And I've actually kind of thought of going over right here on Central Street and then go up Fruit Street, and then you're actually pretty close to Martin Burns. But that's what I'm most interested in, is your perspective on how accessible or inaccessible or just hands-off is Martin Burns.
Yeah, so there's a staff person in our office who I really want you to connect with. His name is Patrick Reed. He's our transportation program manager, and I've been talking with Patrick a lot about this. Behind the scenes, the transportation program had applied for funding to explore some of these different options.
Yeah.
He also has had some background conversations with some of the different groups that oversee this. I want you to talk to them directly.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think the main concern was, as you guys know, I think there was some discussion of hunting still being active in that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, you know, is that really true? Is that really still a very active thing? And so could the two uses be mutually conducive, or not necessarily, but he'd be the best resource to speak with. And when you guys are thinking about other ways to explore this, please loop him in.
Yeah, sure.
He also
No,
could
absolutely.
help- He
No,
could also
it's-
help go after for some grant funds to help you
In
guys
fact, I
explore
think I
this.
saw something online, and your name was all over it. Not you in particular, but the group. And it was kind of about the same subject. And I was like, wow, these guys have already thought about all this. So, and there's one study that was done 2010-ish, and that's where I think the Scotland Road thing came from. But anyway, I don't want to steal your time, but Patrick Reed.
It does connect,
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
to your
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
these are the ways to connect into
Yeah.
other recreational or passive.
And the
activities.
thought just occurred to me tonight that, yeah, this is a great way to get people into open space. You know, it's accessible, it's gonna be we just did parking along the trail, which is great. You know, that was a concern. So, yeah.
Let me just interject, some of the things you're talking about can be aspirational in an open space plan too. You know, when you're thinking about your action plan, you can say, hey, we want to promote trail areas to access some of these different open space parcels. So that could be some of the ways that you position why you might pursue some of these other routes for
Right.
trail areas. So just keep that in mind as
Right.
how you approach some of this.
John, have you had, as a group, conversations with Fish and Game?
Patrick has as well.
Hmm.
Patrick in our office has about that parcel.
Well, you know, I mean, I know that Pat is essentially, you know, horizontally opposed to any use of the right-of-way through Martin Burns. But I think there are, interestingly, some legal issues there where that right-of-way may not be in total control of Fish and Game. Yes, well, because it's a right-of-way which belongs, originally belonged to the railroad, and then was transferred to, what would it have been, New England Electric, then, and then to National Grid, who of course a bunch of crooks, but never mind. Well, they come from my own home country, I'm ashamed to say. Anyway, I have a feeling that something could be done to have at least seasonal access, meaning that it wouldn't happen necessarily during the hunting season. But, you know, I mean, I lived for 30 plus years on the corner of Martin Burns. I mean, literally my property was the southwest peg. Okay, and I can tell you that the amount of hunting that goes on in there is very, very minimal. Now, whether they've been upgrading the road and a bunch of things recently, but I really think that some pressure should be put on them to come up with better reasons for sort of saying flatly no because of what it is. Because I don't think, I think essentially their constituency is pretty small, as it turns out, in terms of real use. And I mean, okay, so from the post office across Central Street to pick up to Fruit Street and beyond actually brings you to the old Downfall Road section,
Yes, yeah.
right? Which then connects directly into, and there are a whole system of trails in there.
Right.
You know, and frankly, largely because I live where I did, I monitored activity in there, and a lot of it is not within the regulations of Fish and Game. Currently, they have the target practice range is closed, except people are using it all the time and leaving all their brass behind, which, I mean, is a stupid dead giveaway.
It's only closed seasonally though.
Yeah.
So it's open except for hunting season.
And, you know,
Yeah.
Or with a permit that
It
you can
does.
get from the state.
you can go in there and shoot.
Yeah,
It's legal, and it's heavily used. I would just
heavily used.
Yeah, like go there Saturday morning. You have to get there at 5:30 in the morning just to get in because they cap how many people go in. And then during deer season, although you don't see them, people are hunting there even prior to. I mean, so it's an important area, and I think your point is well made. Though maybe there's some compromise that can be made if that's the only way to get this trail through. Maybe there's some compromise that can be made. But it's an important space
Excellent, thank you.
for hunters and outdoorsmen, people that want to get out. I mean, I've used it myself, and it's popular.
Right.
You know, and they take, I mean, I don't, you know, just from my dealings with Fish and Wildlife over the years, you know, I mean, they're a wildlife first, you know, organization, not a people first organization. You know, like their mission is wild places, you know, and places that don't have human impact, you know, is a prime focus of theirs. You know, and with that, not existing trail systems are, you know, common and typical in some of their spaces, but they are not pro new trail systems.
No,
You
and
know, like
the other thing is the current practice that's going on there, I find really confusing in that they have essentially upgraded the road so that it's more accessible. They don't keep the bars up to keep vehicle traffic out, okay? They don't bother to do that. They've done away with the two bars that were, the road goes in and then it forks, okay? And it used to be a one-way system,
Yeah.
and they've now done away with the one-way system, and there's no point on the whole thing at which any sizable vehicle could pass a pickup truck. So, I mean, you know, and they don't seem to be very responsible to what, you know, just essentially to sensible use as it used to have. And I'm sort of very confused by that. I have to say I got a pleasant response when I said that the range was being used and sent them a picture of the brass I picked up, which was the, you know, which by the way was not only handguns, but it was long gun brass too. So, which I think is something of a no-no as well. So anyway, I think, you know, that it's a resource which, and it's huge. I mean, it sits right in the middle of the town in a very important way. Yeah. Anyway, enough.
Don't mess with my orange bike helmet.
So that was a little bit of a tangent. So let's bring it back down to the recreation goals. Has everybody else had an opportunity to review these, maybe make some comment, and maybe we can decide this is a good start, how we're gonna work this into the plan?
Yeah, I think we can use this numbered list to kind of just start drafting our section 6, which I can spearhead this week.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And
All
then,
right, if you need help with elaborating, Sadie, just, you know,
yeah, awesome, thank you.
I can go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Do I gather that, from what you said, John, that there's no one individual outside of your committee in terms of being a town employee who has sort of line responsibility for maintenance, supervision, of our so-called...
There's no such thing as a recreation department.
Right. And there's nobody, one of the things I was trying to figure out is, I know that, you are self-funding, right? But there is an item in the budget, the
Yes.
town budget,
Mhm.
which is, I think 50,000 a
Yeah.
year currently.
Yeah.
And does that cover things like, the DPW doing the mowing, or, is it
That's a
offset?
transfer that happens, is the DPW's maintenance of the land, the expenses of the field house. And that money, we've learned, as the days go by, is very restricted. I don't want to call it the wrong name. It's not an enterprise fund. It's money that comes in from the town, but it is to be spent on Central Fields, in support of Central Fields. So we just put a playground in there, and that was like marginal, whether that was an improvement to Central Fields or not. In my mind, that was kind of a no-brainer. The purchase of pickleball nets should not be, that was just, again, it's just kind of marginal, like, all right, this is in support of the basketball court, we put lines for, so now people are using them.
Yeah.
So this budget cycle, we're actually going to ask for a small budget, so we could buy basketballs, so we could buy, and it to me is the start of like legitimizing recreation as a entity, a town entity. Salisbury did it. They started with part-time like 20 years ago, they went full-time, and it's turned into community wellness is my new buzzword. Like, let's not just say it's recreation, let's say we'll merge council of aging with recreation, and the gym that the seniors use during the day can be used by kids at night, kind of is my new mantra.
Right, because one of the things...
But there is no, in fact, we're behind on some of this budget stuff because we've got no one. Like Tracy goes out and gives all the packets out, here, you guys do this, you guys do that. And we get it by email, and if we're lucky, kind of.
Yeah.
Someone needs to raise their hand and say, it'd be nice to have a walking trail,
So who seems to make those decisions currently? I mean, do they...
There is none. There really isn't.
Do they go through this?
We technically, I guess, report to the Board of Selectmen. So if we want something, we can go to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is the money currently is spent with the select board directing how it gets spent, or is it entirely done by
That's a good question. Again, I'll go back to pickleball nets. We purchased pickleball nets, but it was in relation to supporting the Council on Aging's program to have pickleball.
Right.
So they use our fields. I think we actually want to pay for them, but maybe syndicate for them, I don't know. So whatever it is technical. It's just like things seem to go along. You can call the highway department, and if something's broken, they'll fix it. And,
right.
Kind of play well in the sandbox with everybody. But
right.
if it came to buying picnic tables, let's put picnic tables in Central, or let's even better, let's put trees there. Let's put some shade trees by the playground with a bench. That gets a little iffy, like the path of how we go about doing that is
Right.
twisted.
So this, the list that you sent, okay, which I find very encouraging because it mentions things that I think we need to think about. But interestingly, many of those things, or some of those things, are areas where the town will have to make decisions. And our past track record of decision ain't too good.
Yes.
You know, because I think it's fair to say that the, ironically, the top lot was financed by COVID,
Yes,
meaning that COVID funds.
as well as the repairs to the
Yes,
playground
right.
at the library, yeah.
And also many years previously, the town spent, which still sticks in my gullet because I was around when it happened, almost $250,000 to buy what you refer to as the Kent Way property, which has never been developed, largely because the cost of developing it were never thought about when that purchase was made. And unfortunately, we seem to have a, what shall I say, a habit of rushing out and doing something without any sense. And this is why I think this list is a really, you know, it needs to go, I think, almost wholly into our plan. I really do, because it's addressing stuff that just simply keeps sort of falling off the table or whatever, and gets done in a, and it's nothing to do with you folks, because I think you folks do a terrific job. But for example, the path from Mander Fields to the high school, that actually is currently breaking all kinds of conservation commission type, you know, I mean, it's a DEP nightmare. Yet at the same time, it would be a vast improvement if there were a very usable through all four seasons connection there, and would make
It's a beautiful area.
Yeah,
There's
would
two
make
islands out there.
right.
Just it's fabulous, yeah.
would make the case for putting in your walking path
Have you ever
even
heard
stronger.
of it as it's an evacuation route for the high school? Have you ever heard that?
Oh, it is?
I've heard that. That just came up, actually.
Okay.
Like if there was some crisis, they would evacuate to Central Street Fields.
Oh,
to a staging area.
right, through, okay.
And it just like, my mind exploded with, all right, so someone in a wheelchair. Well, no, there's actually, it's not that wet, it's kind of wet,
Yeah,
seasonally wet.
there's a little bit of a wood.
And there's a little bit of a bridge, we'll say.
Well, yeah,
over
but
culvert.
what's
Yeah.
to be done in there
Is
is,
the loop, marsh loop trail there, or is this?
I don't think it's called the Marsh Loop Trail. You can leave, if you go in at Central
The one
Fields.
that's at the end of
And
the,
you go down the hill, you can actually walk to Triton. And it's just there, and the kids, some kids use it.
yeah, it emerges in the corner
The
of there.
cross-country coach has got his eye on it.
Yeah,
So that,
yeah,
if
it
something
connects.
happens down there, it'd be interesting.
That's a
Right.
different trail.
Yeah, yeah, no, there's other stuff up there.
Yeah, okay.
But I
So
mean,
it's
it's
a
been
road.
done with sort of, you know, spare pallets for Home Depot kind of approach, all of which is, you know, an awful no-no. But anyway, that's a good example of something
Yeah.
where, you know, a little planning
Forms the
and
land.
not that much money would really change the nature of that connection.
Be glad to see the goals, I mean.
So on the map here, it says
Like,
open protected space. You guys map? It's gray. I would think that's this area here.
oh. Compared to,
As
Well,
opposed to
does it-
state land or town land or,
Yeah.
well, yeah, and we're doing, you guys are doing my work here, let's, we can get back on your agenda.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
I mean, given that section 6, which is the analysis of needs,
Right.
has a management on the checklist, management is
Yeah.
one of the items, so
Right.
everything
Oh, yeah. no,
discussed here, and the action plan,
I jumped
section
right on that.
7.
I said, oh, management, then we get some kind of
And
recreation
then
director. out.
section 7 is the actual action plan, so,
Yeah.
you know, the point of this document, they did.
You already done everything?
We're
Just
in the
finished
middle
my
of,
section.
I had it down for 8 o'clock, so I'm like.
And actually, the workbook specifically mentions management,
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Right,
that's-
right, which you didn't before.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the state grants also talk about recreational management. So there is grant money available. I mean, once we have an open space plan.
Exactly, this
Approved
document,
plan.
and given we're gonna have this in 6 months or whatever,
I mean, probably wouldn't cover the whole cost, but it might get,
12 months.
you know, might get us from a part-time to a
2012.
full-time.
But we also need to learn the lesson, I think we did, from our application to get monies for, you know, a consultant to do a lot of this. And that is that our chances of getting money were close to zero because of the nature of what we wanted to do and the kind of community we are and the focus that was in fact posed for that kind of funding, which, you know, at that point just didn't
Yeah.
cover, you know, so I
So I
wouldn't
can't
get
say
too
I-
excited about having state funds.
One thing I did notice is that there's a consideration given to towns that are characterized as rural, and Newbury does fall into that, you know, it's hot, so in other words, when it comes to these, I mean, I think, if I understand what you're saying is, if you go to a place like Lynn or Medford or something like that, you know, they're getting money from the state to help with their recreational directors and what have you, and that's where a lot of the emphasis has been historically. But I think there is an actual initiative to sort of get some of that out into some of the more rural areas like Topsfield and what have you. So I mean, it behooves us to get this report together. So I mean, we just need a report so we can start doing it. But it does bring up the issue of with you know, just who would be responsible then would be. I know right now we're looking at Kristen as kind of our go-to person for when, you know, if we ever apply for grants to acquire open space, say, would the same thing, you know, who would handle the recreation side of this?
Right.
If it's relative to open space, probably Kristen, but it depends specifically what you're talking about. I would assume that'd be the question for her.
Yeah.
So this is all great conversation. And so I think we're okay now. We have an action item after this meeting on incorporating these rec committee goals into the plan. And then if you want to bounce them off us, well, just put it into that Google document, I guess, and we can review it and we can comment on it.
yeah,
So everybody's good with that?
sounds good.
Okay, great. Before we move on, I just wanted to ask the gentleman in the corner, are you here for any specific reason? Do you have some questions or?
No, I'm simply interested sitting in, kind of just getting a feel. I didn't realize quite how intimate it was. I thought it was going to be slightly more like I could sit in the back and kind of just observe. Yeah.
Yeah, are you interested in getting involved in open space or?
Maybe a little bit. I'm just kind of interested in seeing what the meeting is about, kind of how it goes, and just what it's like.
Well, if you have any questions, just speak up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Excellent. Okay, so next on the agenda, we had a request to write up a one-pager or so from Tracy, our town administrator, on our activities over the last year. This is for the annual town report. Sadie, last time we spoke, I think you volunteered to do that. Is that still something you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just wanted to right now at this meeting talk about it a little bit. it's kind of weird the way the process, like so this report right now that we need to submit by Thursday is for fiscal year 2025. So July 2024 to June 2025 is what we have to report on. So we have to, a lot of that was before I was even working even as an intern with you guys. So if you have any, I was thinking of, I kind of just started writing like a general, like, you know, the committees got back together in 2024 after, you know, some absence during COVID and stuff. And then, you know, you guys brought me on as an intern, Kristen brought me on as an intern to kind of be the staff, you know, liaison, and then kind of started formulating the process for how to complete the plan. So yeah, if you guys have any, you know, thoughts about that, I think it's just going to be like a one-pager. It doesn't have to be super detailed or anything like that.
Letter
So.
or one page.
Yeah.
I think our meeting notes are obviously going to be the best thing.
That's true.
I would just plow through Mike's, his notes are great. So I just plow through those and.
Hope so. Thank you. And I wrote the one last year, so I can send that to you just to show you what we submitted, if that's
That would
helpful.
be very
Okay.
helpful, yes. And then if I could just, I'll probably send it out to maybe you and David, but if anyone else wants to take a look before I submit it, that I can not just send it out to everyone. And I kind of just need like, you're okay before I submit it, because it's like a committee public facing document, so.
I'm fine with
Okay.
Yeah.
that. Okay. Great.
Is there a drop dead date?
Well, Tracy's been telling all the committees November 21st, but she's also kind of been like, you know, end of November, so I'm trying to get it to her by Thursday, if possible.
Okay. We'll be looking for it then. Great. All right. Thank you. Open Space Committee minutes. Has everybody had the opportunity to read those?
Yep.
Yeah. Would anybody like to move to?
Motion we accept.
Before we do, I have one question, because I didn't get them until, well, I did, but I couldn't find them till tonight, and that is, I made some notes the night because we were on Zoom, right?
Yes.
And Mike, my question to you is, everybody had fairly short, simple ideas, and I didn't see those in the minutes, about you know, what we thought were important things. Did you?
The goals and action plan.
Yeah, you know, I mean, for example, on my notes say, Mike, protecting land improvement, stewardship, management, information. Christina, willing to spend dollars on potential undeveloped land funding. Bill, education outreach, willing to spend dollars. Not quite sure what that is, but anyway.
Yeah,
Dawn talked about information, Jim talked about the whole email issue.
I didn't call it out on a person-by-person basis. I just summarized all of them under that OSRP goals/action plan paragraph in the minutes.
See.
Yeah, well, I wondered whether we wanted to sort of put them into the minutes at this point or not. Only in the, you know, because I don't,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Wasn't following.
in terms of what's there, looking at the minutes again, I don't think, okay. Okay, you're talking about C, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make sure that that everybody felt that what they brought up was covered. I mean, Jim,
I don't remember,
you don't. Oh, that's okay. No, but since we were doing a Zoom meeting, I thought that, you know,
yeah.
taking some notes while we were doing that was important to me to find out where people's heads were at. Okay,
I'm
all right.
happy with it myself. I don't-
So I don't have any problems then.
I've also, I was looking back at that specific part of the meeting
Yeah.
recording and like making,
Right.
like to start drafting, like, just a
Yeah.
list of action items that we wanna include, so if I can upload that to the Google folder, so that people can start looking at it and adding their own ideas too,
Right.
if that works.
The only thing I'm thinking is that's, you know, there's a little bit of emphasis where two people say similar things. So that, you know, and one of the things I didn't see here was the money. That's kind of what's missing, I think, like, is this idea of the question of funding and therefore the fact that more people said they were willing to see a small increase, and several people commented on that. Does that make any sense?
There's a mention at the end of that section about the funding for protection, but it's just not the last sentence.
Yeah, because those questions with the greatest responses included,
Yeah, I mean, too.
and the funding of further protection of town-owned lands. So that's the way I summarize that, but I would word that differently if you
Yeah.
think it needs to be reflected differently there.
Yeah, I just think maybe, I mean, what are you saying? You think this, I don't find anything that specifically refers to that. In this item C, I hate to be picky, but,
So it wasn't, David, the end, and funding of further protection
Town-owned lands.
of the town, yeah.
where's that?
Yeah, where is that? Kinda weird.
Okay,
I think that was
The tail end of section.
okay, yeah, but,
That doesn't.
right,
that doesn't
but
look like
that's
what's
not
happening.
what we were saying, is it?
Well,
We
that's-
weren't saying funding for further protection of town-owned lands because frankly, we own so little.
Well, I think that's what I intended, was like funding more acquisition by the town, I think was the intention of my
Yeah,
phrasing there based on the survey. Like, people seem to support the town buying more land.
Not protecting
Right.
existing property.
Yes. yeah, okay.
Or also contributing funds to improve what existed,
Yeah.
you know, that might not have any improvements on them, you know,
Right,
from the respondents.
yeah, okay.
But if it needs to be worded different to be
Right.
clearer, absolutely. I'm just going to it and rereading it, that's my
I guess, yeah, I just,
remembrance.
I guess I was reading it as saying spending more money on what we have, whereas I think most people who responded to the question, because of the way the question was put, were responding to essentially,
Oh,
if you know what I'm saying,
Well, and-
spending money in a broader sense than that.
right, I think without pulling up those survey notes, I think there was also consensus to put protections on existing town properties from the
Yes.
surveys too, so that might be what that line means in the
Okay,
notes.
but,
Which
well,
people seem
because,
supportive to put a
because
conservation restriction on a town piece or something like that to, you know, lock it up, so to speak,
right,
from when we summarize the survey results. So, okay, I see what you're saying.
But also to acquire.
yeah,
But also
because we
to
have
acquire.
talked about the upper and lower greens not having any permanent protection, which is pretty wacky when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
The greens wouldn't be covered under like Article 97 in the state? No?
No, there's no protection for either of them.
Minus a
and-
2/3 vote to do anything with them?
Well, I don't know, I mean, it wouldn't cost very much either, so I mean, looking at funding it,
Yeah.
and I don't know, there's this sort of assumption, there's the confusion about the National Historic District, which people seem to think protects the land. It doesn't protect the land, it protects changes to the any federally funded item that might be there, like a roadway or something, that you can't do that because it's part of the National Historic Register as a district, but it doesn't have any other protections other than that. And the couple of times I've raised it in the last year or two, everybody sort of said, well, why would we want to do that? I was, finally told the select board, well, because in the future the town could decide to sell the upper green and there's nothing to prevent it at the present time, except perhaps the population rising up and saying, we don't want to do that. But it would be so easy to protect it. And the same is true of the lower green, interestingly. Yeah, anyway.
So I just added, and tell me if this makes sense, so the line funding for the protection of town-owned lands and funds to acquire additional conservation and recreation properties by the town.
Yeah, yeah, good.
Okay.
I hate to chime in on this issue, but that actually is one that has come up in other open space plans, is that you're not alone in the municipality owns parcels that don't have any permanent protection, but for all intents and purposes, the community views it as an open space parcel. And so one of the strategies that other open space communities will pursue is for those parcels, they want to try and lock them down. And so that's one of the strategies in sort of their broader set of goals and strategies for some of the parcels that are, just town ownership. What's the choice? Some of them may be just surplus and they're not as high value. Some of them are parcels that maybe you guys would really want to prioritize and protect.
Action item.
Yeah, action item for sure.
Yeah. Cool. So can we move to approve them as
amended?
Approve with amendments,
As a-
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, well, since I made the change, maybe somebody else should make the motion.
I'll make a motion to
Um,
approve.
yeah, right.
Who seconded, I'm sorry?
Jim.
I think that was Jim.
We
Or David.
have a very easy issue.
David can second.
All in favor, that's all that matters.
Right, all in favor? Aye.
Okay, and I'll send you those, Sadie, updated as well.
Thank you.
Okay. So, everybody's been reviewing each other's sections, not all sections are done, but, and not all of us have had the opportunity to review everything yet. But we do have on our agenda discuss edits for section drafts. So Dave and I and Sadie, we put this on there because we wanted to make sure we're making progress on the report. I don't think we were gonna open it up and go comment by comment today.
No, I kind of wanted this item to be, if anyone has anything that's like above a surface level comment, like above a typo or something, like like content wise, if anyone has an issue. David, I know you had submitted some comments regarding the climate change section. Did you?
Yeah,
wanna talk
well,
about it?
that's a whole kind of, I don't know whether it's, whether tonight is the time to do that, but I sent out an email to everybody, a couple of days ago, and I think maybe it's up to you, but maybe there needs to be a little time to sort of digest it, because essentially we were faced with the fact, well, one of the weird things was that, as Sean pointed out, the one section that was missing anything.
That was my
Yeah,
mistake.
well,
I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay, Sadie, I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
But also, it was the one section that actually, if you came to review it, was very difficult because it was two pieces which clearly were
Yeah.
pretty separate.
Yeah,
And-
but I think I know, Sean, you had kind of taken a lot from Ella's and like added to it a lot, which I think was good. So it's kind of like just a further developed draft of what Ella had written.
Yeah, so there's two versions. There was many versions actually, but those two were the probably most resolved. There's one that's more, how would you put it? It's I'm trying to think of the word. It's like paragraphs and sentences and that sort of thing. And the other one is more bullet points. And so the difference between the two, or the big change, is the purpose was to get it down within that. I mean, the entirety of section 4 is supposed to be 5 pages according to the thing, and 2 of them are supposed to be devoted to climate change, and that section is supposed to have 2 maps in it. So that doesn't lend a lot of space, if you think about it, towards having exposition. So that's what that final one was all about, and also incorporating some of the ideas that Ella had come up with. And there's a bunch of other ideas too. And the truth of this matter is, I think, I'm pretty sure Jared could concur on this, but you could literally write a book on climate change and how it affects a locality, any locality, but everybody seems to, have a different perspective on what that actually means. Oddly enough, climate itself, if you think about it, is actually a very general issue and not really suited to locality. But anyways, having said all that stuff, just to fit it in here so that we can, for a couple of different reasons, there's a lot to put in there, I think, that does sort of matter in terms of when we get this document finalized. I do think the state is going to want to look at specific things, and they do have a checklist. That's what I'm getting. And that these things kind of have to appear in that section in order to get the appropriate checkbox, so that we can then be considered for whatever it is we're actually shooting for, which I would gather is funding, through some sort of grant or whatever. So that was my focus there. Get it down to something that we could easily get the checkboxes, and it's small, and it doesn't really take over the whole report. There's a lot more to talk about in terms of open space and town than this. So anyways, there's 2 versions. One of them is more it's sort of more verbose, and the other one is far more, I guess, concise. Has a lot more stuff in it. Some of it, at this point, I'm open to anything. Just put your comments in there. I was kind of hoping, we could actually kind of talk about this process a little bit, because I don't know. I want to see people's comments, but I don't necessarily want to be. Somebody has to be responsible for getting this whole thing together in a single, cohesive unit. I mean, one of the things I did notice when I was going through the sections is, and this is a very natural thing, and I did the same thing, was the first thing we talked about is the geography of Newbury. Well, we don't need to talk about that 4 times, one for every section. But it does keep cropping up. And that's fine, it's perfectly normal, but somebody has to say, okay, we're going to talk about the geography in section 2. And then the rest of the thing, we can just assume that they've already read section 2, they've got section 4, that kind of thing. So those kinds of edits. I don't know.
That's kind of something I thought I would do. I know I'm not very graceful at the moment with my process, but
so that long-winded thing is to just sort of get to that. And so what I was hoping is that we could be rather free with the comments, I should just say, I have seen a couple of little areas here where there's, maybe the wrong word or whatever. I think, I think it was in section 5 or something, I saw that Martin Burns was in West Newbury or something. So anyways, point is,
Not for me.
if I put a comment in there, they're just these little brief things that, for somebody to look at some point down the road, that's really what I think what we're looking
So I think we're all taking a crack at it and putting in our comments. Sadie's gonna pull all this together, and then we're gonna have like our first rough draft.
Right.
We might need to get together and dedicate a longer meeting, like 3, 4, 5 hours on a Sunday afternoon or whatever it is, to sit down and like finally get this into one rough draft. That now Gerard says, like, it'd be great if we could get something that's like close, at least the first draft, and then give it to Merrimack Valley before we put too much time into like making it perfect. Let's get our first draft. And then let them say, okay, this you can cut out, you need to put more in here to get it approved. And then we can really finalize that. And I suggest at that point, like track changes, like this is, something like that in a document where we could actually like really say, and then we can go right through it together, be like, all right, keep or accept, and we can bang this out. Some process similar to that, I think, is how we're gonna get this to the end line, because right now we're all out here working in our sections, which is great. We do need Sadie or somebody to pull it together, and then at that point, we can maybe get it to something that we can get to Merrimack Valley.
Yeah, and I think right now we're kind of all giving each other comments on our sections, and then I think the next step is I will take it in, incorporate everyone's comments, and then, like make my own judgment calls, like you were saying, like if, the same topic's mentioned in every section, I can look at, where does the workbook say we should talk about geography, and then I can keep it in that section.
Right.
And make it kind of cohesive, and then we can do another round of comments.
Yeah, I would even say like, when reviewing it, making comments, you don't have to get so far down to the details, like if there's just a simple typo, just type it out. You're not gonna like explain to
Right,
that's a typo, that's not there.
They're not there.
To your point about working through it, I suspect you guys do reference the maps kind of in your individual sections. And so it's sort of in line as you guys are reading through it from the maps. Okay, we're making this reference here, is it the right reference for the figure? And then what are we trying to describe about this map? And is that just redundantly expressed? And so as you guys are working through it in its totality, it'll be a little bit of a grind at one time, but it'd be kind of neat because then I think you could arrive at that cohesive and sort of common voice. You guys probably all write slightly different, us and all our staff. So maybe that'd be an opportunity to kind of clean up some of that voice or perspective as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's all landing in Sadie's shoulders.
So thanks for volunteering.
I guess the only comment I would sort of add is that I think from the beginning my focus has been, it could be interpreted to be anti-workbook, and I would confess that I probably am. Because because I've seen what happens, and what I mean by that is that we had a open space plan that Mike and I were involved in many moons ago, and it went precisely nowhere really. Okay, I think it's fair to say I think there was nothing particularly wrong with it in terms of what it was dealing with, but I think as a document, the problem was that it was sort of, it had two parts, and that was the town had hired a consultant, and the consultant cranked out all the sort of early stuff and worked with Alan and people like that, and we plugged in the master plan information. And then we hit a stone wall because, as Mike reminded us several meetings ago, when it came to go to the select board and the conservation commission and the planning board, they wouldn't do anything about it. So
in terms of what?
approval.
We just didn't have support back then from it, like, there was no,
Well,
Yeah,
for them to
we're
approve
already,
it.
we're
I mean,
already
approve the
kind
plan.
of proactively trying to like deal with that
Yeah.
ahead of time before we even give them a chance to say no.
Well, right, so that's one of the reasons that I pressed for us to reach out now, and as I said to Sadie in an email, she managed to put all those emails together and it went out just a day ago, that simple request for some initial thought. But the other thing I would say is I think what happened specifically in relation to, and I do feel obviously a need to somewhat explain myself. My need was, I thought, okay, what does climate change mean for open space and recreation in Newbury? And when I came to look at what the workbook was suggesting we needed to do, I frankly found it very poor and flawed. And when I moved to look at the Nature Conservancy map that they almost said was mandatory, which I think frankly was a really poor move for a bunch of reasons, but not least because what they presented told me, from my perspective, they didn't even understand the nature of the tool. I don't know whether it's, what's her name, Melissa Cryan? I don't know whether it's her or her, does she have other people working with her? Well, you know, the point is that okay, so there's this new push for resilience. There's a new report just come out, just hit the press, just hit the public, 2 weeks ago, okay? And the whole of the thrust of the Nature Conservancy tool is resilience, and it's resilience as it relates to a whole complex of things where climate change is, okay, the sort of thematic thing that has led to the need to identify the role that lands play and can play and all the rest of it. But the tool itself, when you apply it to Newbury, frankly, doesn't work very well. And its density is far too great. The one thing I found was very interesting was it talks about properties which are essentially sort of locked up in the sense they're in permanent conservation. And if you put that screen into that one tool, that's the one thing that shows very clearly how much land in this town is locked up. But it also shows how much land in the town is locked up, not by the town, okay, which is one of the comments I made earlier. And so I felt that rather than, well, among the other things it talked about was hotspots. Now, hotspots is a dreadful vocabulary choice for what they are talking about is heat-stressed areas, not hotspots. Hotspots could be downtime nightclubs, for heaven's sake. And if it's a technical term which is used by those kind of people in the whole area of conservation, like the Conservancy, of which I'm a member, by the way, yeah, okay, but you need to say that, because hotspots, if we put hotspots into a report, most people, ordinary people, are going to be really pretty confused by that. But if you talk about heat-stressed areas, then the realities get, and so that's why I thought, okay, what we need to do is to try and characterize the community in a way that then says, okay, if a community is a coastal community with then if you're looking at climate change as applied to that kind of community, what does it mean? Well, it means a number of things, but not that many. And the one thing I found interesting, and this is no criticism of Sean or Ella, but the one thing that never appeared was the whole effect on health, okay? Except in relation to hotspots. But the major effect on health in this community is ticks, okay? Is insects, is
Related to climate change, you mean?
right. Well, in other words, it never comes up, okay?
Yeah, can I just interrupt for a second? I think, yes, I agree that hotspots aren't super relevant to Newbury, but, I mean, they mention it in the workbook, and I think, Sean, you did a good job with, you know, doing what the section in the workbook asked. And I think we should, like, since they mention it specifically, I think we should, like, mention it in our draft. But since it's not super relevant to Newbury, I don't think we have to, like, you know, focus on it super, we don't have to really dive in. But I think our job is to kind of, you know, interpret the workbook the best we can, you know, meet all the bare minimum requirements, but then, you know, we
No,
have
but
to
wait a
focus
minute,
on
Sadie,
Newbury.
I'm sorry, our job, in my estimation, is to provide an open space and recreation plan for Newbury within the sort of broad skeleton provided by the state.
Right.
It's not to satisfy the requirements of the workbook in a slavish or itemized manner.
I'm not saying that either, but we do need, this is what they're literally going to go through this workbook and be like, did they do this? Check, did they do this? Check. My concern is to do, I don't want to put us through more work than we have to get it approved. I think we should kind of, you know, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with everything they say we need to include, but I think, you know, at the end of the day, we want it to get approved in our work to show for something.
I agree with that too. To me, this is one hurdle to the next better thing. I just want to get through this. I want to do the best job I can to make a relevant plan, but at the end, I want to make sure we check those boxes, get this approved so we can move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, and I think the plan is definitely super important to the town, but I think the more important things are the action that we will take after getting, you know, the access to grant funding that this plan will provide us access to.
I mean, I think it's evidenced by us writing our own plan and not hiring this out. This is a pretty motivated group. I don't know, in my opinion anyways. So I'm like, I really feel strongly that if we can get this plan done as a whole, we'll have a lot more momentum to do other things. Like, we don't agree on everything.
Okay, I don't disagree, but I also think the other thing we need to remember is that the plan has to be something that is real and functional for the community, and therefore it has to have buy-in from all of the people who need to buy in to it, who need to have letters of recommendation of support, and it ultimately needs to be something that the residents can use as opposed to something that essentially we did because the state wants us to.
But by doing the survey and getting the feedback from all the different committee members and all these steps that we're taking, aren't we essentially, by doing that, we incorporate those results into our plan? I feel like we're addressing that or meeting those needs.
Yeah, but I think that I agree, but I think that needs to be what's more front and center than not, in a sense. Largely because Newbury, okay, and then I'll get off it, but the workbook is a one-size-fits-all thing, which is pretty dumb when you think about the fact that it's dealing with, it's providing guidance for places that are as disparate as Lynn, Brookline, Springfield, Pittsfield, etc. And Newbury and places like that, okay, and Blandford, if you even know that we have a town called Blandford in Massachusetts, because we do, which is tiny, it's a big town with minimal population. And so that's why the problems it has, for me anyway, are that it's dealing, it essentially is, its attitude is, you don't know what is needed and we'll tell you. And I'm sorry, we do know what is needed. We don't particularly need to be told.
Can I say one thing?
That's fine if we don't want to be eligible for grant funding from the state. I mean, you know, if that's the requirement to open the door to those funds, then that's what we have to do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do swap surveys to apply for fish and wildlife grants, but I have to do them, otherwise we're automatically disqualified from them. So it kind of is what it is, unless we want to fund things other ways. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, we can beef it up any way we want to, but we have to have the base of whatever they're asking for to qualify. There's got to be
Yeah,
some,
right.
you
I'm
know
not
what I mean? Like,
suggesting we don't put, I'm not suggesting we don't have the base. But I'm simply suggesting that some of the stuff, it's not that we don't do it, but the classic example is this Nature Conservancy tool. Okay? They didn't know what they were recommending.
I don't know that I'm following that. I mean, that tool is a nationwide mapping resource. So I'm not sure I understand, like, what the argument with it is. Like, it's a national resource
Well,
for
it's,
resilient mapping in the entire country.
yeah, exactly, and at levels which okay,
May or may not capture the nuances for the town.
yeah, I mean, there are, other better tools, and also one can use it, but, essentially, the very fact that in the workbook, they show a totally unresolved version of that tool. Okay? Which tells me they don't, they don't know what it, either they don't know or they didn't think about it. But it's okay, we can use it.
Can I just say one thing that keeps bugging or gnawing at me is that sections 3, 4, 5 are the descriptive, narrative, packed with some information, but the part that matters most to us is what we are going to be getting to, which becomes that living thing, which is, we have the analysis of needs in section 6, but more specifically, section 7, the action plan. They are not super prescriptive there, like you need to do this, this, and this, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. And that's where we get to decide what our priorities are. And it doesn't even have to necessarily map directly to some of the descriptive stuff earlier on there, within reason. I'm not saying it's an open, sort of clear slate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that action plan is really where we're going to take off. And so I think we should, kind of view it as those earlier sections. We just got to, to a certain extent, conform and do what we need to do to get the check marks. But then, and that's where I believe the 2010 plan kind of got stuck. The action plan never really had the buy-in or had the management, the oversight, the urgency,
It was
the
also,
engagement, et cetera, all that stuff. So
it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so many items,
Yeah.
and they were so unclearly, prioritized.
Yeah. So,
that,
so all I'm saying is, like the action plan piece, we have,
Right.
one committee here, we'll have the other committees, and how we, work with them and carry that out and keep it tight, you know? It should be, it's gonna be a roadmap, right, that changes and constantly gets refined. Don't overdo it, and just make sure what we put there is most relevant.
Right.
And I think I'm stating the obvious, but I just,
No, let me jump in here, and I think that's a really good point.
Yes.
It doesn't have to just be like, we want to buy these parcels. Some of the actions could be, we want to pursue funding, we want to pursue state grant funding. We want to lobby and advocate and educate other boards about the findings of our open space plan. Like, those can be things, and I would strongly recommend you include those as some of the things, because they are the intangibles that get to, you guys want to infiltrate this into the community, including to us residents. Like, what does the plan mean? Where did the group arrive with all of its work? And then the other comment I would add is just when you're thinking about the climate change thing, the biggest language now, they're calling it hotspots, is really prioritization. The state will openly say in any of these forums, we don't have enough money to fix all the culverts. We don't have enough money to buy all of the open space parcels that the communities want to buy. So how do we prioritize? And I think that's language you should echo here, because the community is going to prioritize the issues as it relates to climate change. And I tend to agree with you, David. Thinking about here in Newbury, what are the issues? Okay, we have some coastal impacts, right? We have coastal related flooding impacts. So it's the beach run itself, and then it's inundation from the ocean side. So that could cause issues related to access, it could cause power issues, things like that. And then you have inland flooding issues, and you have general sea level rise. So kind of out of those pieces, where are the priority areas that Newbury is going to be most impacted? And those are probably a relatively smaller set geographically than the entire town. And so that's where I think some of this dovetails. You're not going to solve all those issues right here at the open space committee level. But if there happen to be coincidental areas that maybe one of your goals is like identify any opportunities for flood storage, or maybe there's an oceanfront parcel that becomes available, or those would be the kind of places you could articulate some of those broader goals. So I tend to agree with you. You're doing this work, you got to get it compliant. No point in all you guys sitting here without having a little bit of both. You got to make it compliant, you got to have it, at least have enough teeth to be relevant for the residents and provide some sort of roadmap.
Okay, so we addressed the edits, drafts.
I had one little question.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any issues, comments?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Because mine started fine, like I was able to like make comments in different places, and then all of a sudden I couldn't. And I can't, in the ones that I could, it's like, it's saying I'm a guest, and it's not like saving my edits, and I don't know if there was something permission based or what. I didn't know if anybody else was having that issue.
Sending you the, like sharing it with you again?
Okay.
Or do you, it's shared with your Gmail account, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I mean, the same computer, didn't go to a different computer, like literally
So
was
strange.
sitting there
Sorry,
reading
yeah.
sections, and then got to the next section, and all of a sudden, it was like I wasn't me anymore. It was like guest.
Okay.
Won't save, you're gonna lose your stuff. And I was like, what?
Okay.
So just as, in case anybody else was dealing with it.
I haven't had any trouble, well, using the tool itself isn't particularly easy, but other than that, I'm able to save them. I think I see my comments.
Yeah, I see yours too, and I see the ones that did save for me before it kicked me to a guest and not as Mike. So I just didn't know if, I don't know. I don't think I did anything, but maybe I did.
I removed you and then added you back,
Okay.
so maybe that'll.
We'll try that. I'll keep you posted if I'm still having
Okay,
any weird
yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm looking at this, and we said that we're gonna try to have the report done by January 1. It seems like we got a ways to go, especially if we're gonna rely on feedback from other people, or from Merrimack Valley. But it would be time to kind of get all the sections done, and at least comments done. Do we wanna set a deadline to get comments in so we can, would that work for people? I know deadline's gonna be tough for me this time of year, but sure.
Well, yeah, I was thinking maybe we should think about when our next meeting would be, and that could be like kind of helping us with deadlines. Because I mean, I was looking and like it's gonna be kind of tricky to find a meeting time for next
Yeah, because it falls right at Christmas time, right?
Yeah,
The week of Christmas. And we can bump it up a week maybe, if that would work for people. It's just tough time, that's all.
yeah. Or do we wanna set some loftier tasks for homework and then move it to January? And see if we can get some more done in between holiday stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of the Zoom meetings personally. It's a lot easier, and I can squeeze in a Zoom meeting between now and, well, certainly before Christmas,
Okay.
if we want to do that. I don't know how that works for the rest of the committee though.
That would work for me.
I have something for the 16th. Would that be our typical meeting date or 23rd?
But we're not-
23rd?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
not gonna do it on the 23rd.
I also have something
Yeah,
on
that's
the 16th.
You have something on the 16th.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
17th, is that planning board?
17th is planning board, but I'm not, like, if that's the only time we can meet, I can miss the planning board meeting.
Yeah, I mean, anytime that week,
I have no preference, so.
I can't do the 15th. So I can't do Monday.
okay,
And we're not doing the next week,
that would be the 23rd.
yeah.
That'd be tight, I think. Maybe, what about Wednesday the 17th?
That's fine
That'd
for
be
me.
good.
Okay. So we'll do a Zoomer on the 17th.
Zoom on the 17th.
Yeah. That would be good.
Alright.
And let's shoot to have all comments completed, reviewed. It might even be great if we get them to see you before that, so she can have time to pull them together for our
Yeah,
review.
like, maybe by the week before,
Yep,
maybe by like December 10th, Wednesday.
comments by the 10th.
We're gonna stick with the 7 PM on the 17th, or how folks feel about that?
Works for me.
Yep. Same.
We're saying
People
Zoom,
can't do it
by Zoom.
earlier?
Zoom. You wanna
Is earlier possible, or
do an hour earlier, so.
That'd be, yeah, max probably for me too.
do we wanna do 6 o'clock, just so we can end
6 or
a little
6:30.
early? 6 PM?
Okay. Comments by 12:10.
And hopefully we'll have some more feedback from other committees by then. And-
Gerard, what's a realistic timeline if we were to get you our first draft for your comments? What's the
Turnaround time for us?
Yeah.
2-3 weeks
Okay.
max, yeah.
Okay.
For if it's a rough cut, yeah, something like that, assuming that our folks aren't busy yet, I would say within that 3 week, it'd probably be faster than that.
Okay.
Especially if we knew, like, hey, we're aiming for this time, we'll just kind of work it into the schedule.
Mhm.
You guys thinking right after that January timeframe, you'd be in maybe,
Beginning of January.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
I'll relay it to the folks and
As soon as we do that.
Hannah, who you work with, says she's gonna be back from maternity leave in 2 weeks, so
Oh,
our
great.
staff will be very operational on that.
That's good. And Sean, I know you said something about submitting a draft to the select board, right? But that probably, we won't be ready to do that, because I think you said that meeting was early December,
we
but I
will.
don't think we'll.
Yeah, I don't
We won't
think
be
we're gonna make
ready.
that one, right?
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think we were open to, yeah. We would have had to have done something earlier in December.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Soon.
Soon. Now, how, the only part, I mean, actually, when I've looked at most of the sections so far, they all seem to be pretty well, I don't know, they look pretty good. I'm not seeing a whole lot of needs to
Maybe,
be done, but
maybe for December 10th, I can do what we were talking about earlier, like, I could do some editing myself with the comments that I've received so far,
okay.
and then,
Because the thing that's concerning me is
Right.
this goals and action items, because I don't see, I mean, do we have anything on that yet at all? I mean,
yes.
that's the thing.
I can- I've been kind of
All right, so
compiling them
I
into
don't wanna pile
a
it on.
bulleted
Okay.
list, so it's not, you know.
one person,
Yeah, but maybe I could do some edits and then you guys could comment by December 10th, and I can do that, between a few days left in this week and next week.
The action plan map is a required map, correct? Yeah.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, you've already gone through that exercise of kind of looking at the map and picking some areas that are theme-based maybe. Is that something you guys have already done?
Well, we haven't really done the action plan map at all yet, just because our action plan is still very.
Still, you're conceptual.
Yeah,
but,
exactly, yeah, so.
Because something you could do, you could say, hey, we're gonna prioritize wildlife corridors or recreational opportunities, so you can kind of categorize it like that, or you can kind of go through a GIS exercise to identify some, or you guys could kind of just lay the map out and be like, hey, you all know the community, so you kind of know where the opportunities might be, whether it's something that's there or not. You can kind of outline broad swaths, maybe even in different color coding or big bubbles. I don't think you want to, unless you're really adamant about something, call out specific parcels. That tends to be good strategically.
Okay, I see. So, keep it general. Yep, good idea.
Alright. Sounds like a good game plan for the next meeting. A little bit of work there, good. Alright, does anybody have any more updates? I know, David, your email went out to all the different boards and committees. That's done. Have you got any feedback yet on that?
Just one person with a question, and then one person who, I can't remember if I forwarded it to you all yet, but I don't think I have. So email from Bob Connors, the chair of the COMSCOM, with a bunch of good feedback, and he said I emailed it to all the members of the COMSCOM, but he said next meeting I'll, make a point of mentioning that we need some feedback.
Okay, so maybe at the next meeting we can review the
Yeah,
feedback.
whatever feedback has come in.
Okay, we'll add that to the agenda. Anything else from the committee? Okay. We did our next meeting date, so we're good there, so I think we've covered it all for the evening.
We decided it's 7 o'clock or 6?
6.
Okay.
Would like to move to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All in favor?